Welcome back to Primility Primer, our morning reminder of the power of seeking balance through intentional self awareness. My name is Jared Morris. This is episode number 36. And assuming this is not your first time watching the show, you may have noticed that intro was a little bit different than typically how I introduce the show and Primility Primer. Normally, I say this is our morning reminder of the power of balancing pride and humility as we go about our daily lives. But this is Real Talk Tuesday. And on Real Talk Tuesday, we get real. And what I want to talk about today is some real talk about primility, which frankly is about more than just balancing pride and humility. And I had a very important realization about this past weekend. And it is thanks in large part to a person, a longtime Primility listener, a beloved Primility listener, who had the kindness, the courage to admit to me that she just didn't get it. Clearly, despite my best efforts here explaining this and writing about it over time and us talking about it, she wasn't quite getting it. To her, the idea of balancing pride and humility just didn't register. She didn't see the terms like I did. She didn't see that spectrum that we often talk about, where you're trying to get in the middle and use it to make your next decision to be a better one that brings you back into more balance, depending on if you're more on the pride side or more on the humility side. I think she understood the big picture a lot and appreciated it, but didn't get it when it got down into the specifics. And what I realized through that conversation, which lasted well over an hour and was so insightful, and I'm so grateful and thankful to her for admitting that to me, because I know it's not always easy to admit something like that to someone who's investing as much time in explaining this concept as I am. I know that wasn't easy for her, and I appreciate her doing that, because it allowed me to see that even though for me, the concept of primility makes so much sense in the terms of pride and humility, it's about a lot more than that. Because when I go back and think about when I first came up with this term and when this first became a part of my life, it wasn't like I was thinking about it right then in terms of pride and humility. It was really that I was looking for something to grasp onto that would help me lead a more balanced life. At that time, I was working 7 days a week in Miami, had absolutely no balance in my life, really didn't know where I was going, and knew I needed some kind of change. I needed some kind of change to kind of help me overcome this habit that I had seen in my life over and over again, where there just was so little balance, where I would just go 100 miles an hour in one direction, no matter what it was, and then always have to pull myself into balance. So what if I could figure out a way to do that on a daily basis? And for me, the terms pride and humility really made sense. And I've always been this geek that loved kind of joining words and making new ones. And so they fit together so well into primility. And it took off from there. And I've spent so much time thinking about it and talking about it in the terms of pride and humility that even though I don't feel very confident explaining it all the time, it makes so much sense to me internally. But again, I think that's more a function just of how much time I've spent thinking about it within the context of these two words. But it's about more than that. And it may not be about balancing pride and humility. It may be about balancing selfishness and selflessness. It may be about balancing short-term gratification with long-term gain. It may be about balancing talking and listening. It can have different meanings for different people in different situations. Even just for me, it can have a different meaning. The idea of primility can take on a different meaning depending on the circumstance. What's important to me, I think, and how this concept has always worked for me, and kind of the agreement that she and I came to on how it makes sense, is that it's about a spectrum, right? We are faced with so many complicated decisions, so many complicated situations as we go through our daily lives. And adding any more complexity is not going to help us make better decisions or simplify things to where we can move forward in a positive way without complicating things even more. And I think the true value of primility is in simplifying the world around us, allowing us to view individual decisions through the prism of a spectrum where there are opposing forces on either side. We view it which side are we on, right? Am I being too selfish right now, or am I being too selfless? Am I being too prideful? Am I being too humble? Am I being too confident? Am I engaging in too much self doubt? Figuring out which side we're on and making sure the next decision helps bring us more into balance. That's it. It's that simple. And it helps us to stay in that sweet spot in the middle, which for all of these different spectrums that I've talked about today, it's that sweet spot in the middle that allows us to live our most balanced, fulfilling life, that allows us to be our best selves, that allows us to impact the world around us in the best way possible. So I really encourage you, if, as you've been listening to these episodes of Primility Primer, even if this is your first time and you're like, I really have no idea what this guy is talking about. If this idea doesn't make sense to you, or maybe it makes sense to you in a different way, or maybe it does make sense to you within the context of pride and humility, I'd love to know. I'd love for you to email me and let me know. Jared@primility.com. Never hesitate to email me. The only way this concept grows and develops and becomes something that's more impactful to more people is to get your perspectives on it, and then to share those stories and to let people know, like this person that I talked to this weekend, that it's okay to view it in a different way if it still means something to you. It's not the terms pride and humility that I don't have some attachment to them, like I came up with this and it's got to be pride and humility. That's the only way this works. I think the term Primility is the brand. It's the idea. It's a way that we can say this and know what we're talking about. But it's not just about balancing pride and humility. It's about achieving balance, a regular practice of intentional self-awareness, of really stepping back and saying, where am I at on this individual spectrum? What decision can I make next? It's about taking responsibility, taking accountability for ourselves, not worrying about the world around us that we can't control, but worrying about the next decision we can make and making it simpler to make that decision. That's it. That's what Primility is about, not about any individual terms. So again, I'd love to know, Jared@primility.com. If you have questions, if you have comments, or if you just have a story about how this has impacted your life, I would love to know, because it's the stories and it's our sharing stories of how this concept has impacted our lives that will help other people see how it can impact theirs. And that's what I want Primility Primer to be about. That's what I want our discussions about this concept to be about. So I would love for you to share that with me. And I'm so appreciative of this person who shared that with me. Thank you very much for listening to this episode of Primility Primer. Thank you very much for watching. And I will say, I talked about this conversation that I had in our Monday morning newsletter. And if you're not getting that yet, it's every Monday morning. It's 250 words or less. I always keep it short. It's about one thing. So it's meant to provide some inspiration on Monday that can help carry you through the week with not much time investment on your part. I know you've got a lot of subscriptions and content to keep up with. It takes you a couple minutes to read this email, and I hope that it can have a big impact. So go to primility.com/join. You can get on that email list. You can also go to primility.com/newsletter830, and you can actually read that specific newsletter where I talk about this. But I'd love to have you on the email list. Would love to further the connection, talk about the concept more, because that's the way to enrich it and help me explain it better, which will help it mean more to more people. And that's the goal. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you tomorrow on another brand new episode of Primility Primer. Wrist bump.